Hiya, welcome to Proper Horror Show. I've got a quick one for you today. It's a first impressions reaction review thing to Mike Flanagan's new series Midnight Mass. I'm just covering the first episode and I'm going to do, I guess, moderate mild spoilers. There's not really much I can spoil in this. It's all set up really, and that's no bad thing. But if you want to have no idea of what happens specifically in the episode, that's absolutely fine. Maybe watch it and come back to this. Last year I did this episode by episode response to his Haunting of Bly Manor, which I thought was kind of fun to do. I don't know if I'm going to do this for all of Midnight Mass, but I'm going to do it for this episode and we'll see how it goes. I hope you like it. So where do we start? Probably at the end. Yeah, let's start at the end. Specifically this bit. This is quite a big giveaway. Directed, written and created by Mike Flanagan, and you absolutely know it, and it is no bad thing. I'm highlighting this because from what I can tell, Midnight Mass seems to be a passion project for Mike Flanagan, which is a pretty good guarantee of quality. I mean, it worked for Tommy Wiseau, right? By all accounts, this is very much a passion project for Mike Flanagan. Apparently, he has wanted to make Midnight Mass for 5 years. He has been working on it that long. And apparently he even teased the production in Hush, which hopefully I can find evidence of. If I do, it's going to be here. Let's see how that research pays off. Now, this first episode of Midnight Mass was absolutely full of Flanaganisms. Everything I sort of expected and hoped for from this Mike Flanagan production. I'm a big fan of his work, and you notice a certain trademark style with him. So we have the recasting of some of his favourite actors. We've got his wife Kate Siegel. We've got Annabeth Gish, who was also in The Haunting of Hill House. There's Rahul Kohli, who I've probably mispronounced, sorry, who was in Bly Manor as Owen, and he was fantastic. It is really good to see him return. Although he hasn't dropped a pun yet, I'm quite disappointed. He's had puns dropped on him. I'm really hoping he retaliates. We also get the return of Robert Longstreet, who is Mr. Dudley in The Haunting of Hill House. We've also got Henry Thomas returning here as the father of the protagonist. And kudos, Henry Thomas. I did not recognise him. Maybe it's just poor facial recognition, I don't know. So in addition to recasting some of his favourite actors, Mike Flanagan has also returned to the motif of a protagonist who's haunted by the ghost of someone whose death they were involved with. This was something we saw in The Haunting of Bly Manor. It's very much used again here. It's laid out right at the start, and it's something I've got a minor nitpick about, but I don't mind it, to be honest. Now, while this is very similar to something that we have admittedly already seen in The Haunting of Bly Manor, I'm not actually bothered by it. In a weird way, I'm actually kind of excited by it. You see, for everything you might see recurring, you could also think of it as refining. In the world of horror, you kind of have to get used to it. You see, every Friday the 13th film, it's pretty much the same premise. So it's all about how you refine those key ingredients and make the most of them. So if he's going back to the well on format, on actors, on storytelling, what I'm actually hoping for here is refining the use of those, maybe ironing out some of those issues that I highlighted with The Haunting of Bly Manor. So this recurring motif, it does not bother me in the least. It's kind of what I want to see from Mike Flanagan, to be honest. This stuff is what I'm excited to see him do. We also see a vibe in Midnight Mass that I think is best described as Stephen King-like. Mike Flanagan has adapted a lot of Stephen King. Obviously, Gerald's Game and Dr. Sleep were adapted by him. And the whole setup for Midnight Mass, as far as I'm aware, because I have only watched episode 1, I have watched no further. I'm only going off the trailer and episode 1, okay? I am unspoiled beyond that point. The impression I have of Midnight Mass is it is going to be very much similar to Needful Things. I also got a kind of Storm of the Century vibe from this episode for very obvious reasons. There was a storm. I mean, what else am I going to think, right? If it is doing a Needful Things type story, I'm 100% in. I enjoyed the Needful Things film. I thought it's a very strong premise. I would love a remake. In fact, I think I've called for a Mike Flanagan based remake of Needful Things already. I would not be surprised. And I think that love for Stephen King and the Stephen King-like vibe is obviously reinforced by some details we saw on this bookshelf. A little nod and a wink. Mike Flanagan absolutely knows what he's doing here. And the last Flanaganism that I really want to highlight is this. Okay, that might not look particularly noteworthy to you. I'm not getting into numerology here. What I'm pointing out here is that Mike Flanagan's series have a habit of doing a lot of build-up and setup for the first several episodes, and then dropping an absolute explosive episode. Now, in The Haunting of Hill House, it was episode 4. In The Haunting of Bly Manor, it was episode 5. This is a 7-episode series, so my guess is that it would be more likely to be episode 4. And the fact that the letter A has been replaced by 4 twice prominently in this episode, I would say it's a clue. And I'm going to feel awkward if this was an absolutely massive reach by me. Hopefully I'm not wrong. Be kind of embarrassing, wouldn't it? Probably have to come back and make fun of myself. Now, my praise for pretty much any Mike Flanagan production is going to be best described as effusive and indulgent. So I'll just get some random nitpicks out of the way right now before we get into any more details. So first nitpick, this edit was really awkward and annoying and it bugged the heck out of me. The storm was built up very much and then it was over really quickly. I felt we could have spent a little more time with the storm and seen it have a bigger effect. I hate these kids. I hate this kid in particular. He bugs me. It's only episode 1, maybe he's going to redeem himself, that'd be nice, but so far he's been really annoying. And probably the most pedantic nitpick I've done so far, in this bit here, where we're meant to have an echo of the accident scene we saw just a minute earlier, I think the ghost is orientated the wrong way, like her head should be on the other side. It is later in the episode at the end. It's corrected there, but it seems to be the wrong way round here. That probably shouldn't annoy me as much as it did. I feel like it's when I complained that the songs on Fear Street 1994 were not released in 1994. I'm sorry, I notice these things. I can't turn it off. Let's get back to effusive praise.
What did you do to me, Sharif?
So how you feel towards episode 1 of Midnight Mass probably depends on how warm you are to Mike Flanagan already. Because it is quite slow, it is quite deliberate, and it isn't very driven, which is thematically very relevant, but it can be a bit challenging. If you're not already warmly predisposed towards a project, you might consider it boring. I would say it's mature, it's deliberate, it's patient. As you would expect from the first episode of a whole new series, it's a lot of setup. You know, that has to be done, and Mike Flanagan likes to do ensemble casts, so there is a lot of setup to get in there. We get the basic premise that our main character, Riley Flynn, whose name sounds way too much like Riley Finn for me, and it was very distracting. I don't know if that's a deliberate tribute or not. I find it a little weird. He went to prison for a drunk driving accident. This is something you find out in the first few minutes of the show. And he returns to his very remote, kind of worn down island community. There's a lot of characters for us to meet, some of them familiar faces from other projects, as I mentioned. And just a lot of scene setting, but it is admittedly, it's quite slow. It's getting the setup of him returning, being treated somewhat warily, seeing that the island is basically not thriving, and setting up a lot of the mysteries that we're going to cover over the course of the series. You also have the introduction of the slightly odd Father Paul, who is the replacement for the missing under slightly odd circumstances Monseigneur Pruitt. That is going to be one of the central mysteries, and we get it from pretty much the first moment we see Father Paul. This is something we're going to have to work out. It made me think of this.
With the box. What was in the box?
We also spend a fair amount of time with Kate Siegel's character, who remembers Riley Flynn from back in the day. She's returned to the island, she's sort of gained a faith she didn't really have, and she's also pregnant. We don't hear much about this, but I think thematically it's relevant, and it's obviously going to play a fair amount in this. It's going to play a fairly big part in the story later. Overall, what we're seeing here is a community in decline. The sort of attendance of the church is down, people are leaving the island, industry isn't taking off. You know, you've got the sheriff's offices in the back of the general store. I kind of like that. I thought it was kind of a fun touch. And they're also going to be battered down by a storm. So it's establishing that sense of decline from the characters' fates and the conditions. I'm guessing that renewal is going to be a very important theme as well. We'll have to see in later episodes, but I think it's set up by the fact that we don't end on the night scene. We return to the morning, the sun rising, the renewal of the day. So that is my guess. And it's also very relevant for the religious themes. I think if you're going to deal with religious themes, especially with Catholicism, you're going to have to talk about renewal and rebirth, right? It's unavoidable. Those religious themes are going to be very prominent. I think that's absolutely inarguable. I'm kind of wary myself, but we'll get into that. Basically, it's called Midnight Mass. It's clearly centred around a mysterious priest, and we've got all sorts of imagery. We've got Flynn returned to as the prodigal son, which is a bit, on the nose, but what else are they going to do? It's maybe weird if someone didn't mention it. But maybe a bit more subtly, you also have Kate Siegel returning as a mother with an unexplained child. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into this at this point. I'm just predicting. I think it's also pretty clear that Midnight Mass is going to look a lot at the theme of faith and purpose, and this is something that's maybe spelled out a little too heavily at the end, but it's quite important to do so, and I think the acting is quite lovely in this scene. Basically, the setup for this scene is kind of the parallels between Riley being locked up in prison and being an adherent of a faith, which I know is setting off warning bells, but bear with me. He's released from prison and he's also released from his faith. He comes out of it an atheist, as he says explicitly. He's looked into all the other world religions and he's basically decided there's no God at all and there's no purpose. So you have this very interesting parallel that he is released from prison, he's released from religion, but now his struggle is he's too free. He doesn't know what to do with himself, he doesn't have a purpose, and I think him finding purpose is clearly going to be his character arc for the season. I'm quite interested in it. But I am worried about how they're going to handle this. To be honest, I don't think shows tend to handle themes of religion and faith very well. I think they're a bit hamstrung in how they approach the topic because of the sort of consensus at the moment, and especially on Netflix, there are certain worldviews you can't really go outside of. Now, the show has included a Muslim character and a Muslim family. This is Rahul Kohli's sheriff is also a practicing Muslim. I'm kind of wary about this. It's got a sort of Netflix casting, Netflix production vibe to it, but at the same time, I've got a lot of faith in Mike Flanagan and in his ability to do something interesting and not just boilerplate with this. I know it being on Netflix is going to sort of constrain it and probably tie it down to a certain viewpoint, but I'll see how it goes. I'm hoping it does something more interesting than just a basic all faith is good, it's all interchangeable sort of thing. We'll see how this one goes. Obviously, I'm wary, but this is early days. We'll see what they do with it. And what would faith be without mysteries, eh? Now, as I said, there's a lot of scene setting and theme setting in this episode. Just as you would predict, it's all kind of promising at the moment. But we also get our mysteries set up.
Oh, what's in the box?
Also going to be very interested in hearing what's up with Kate Siegel's pregnancy. I know she has a character name, but now that I recognise Kate Siegel, it's just going to be Kate Siegel. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be anything supernatural rather than just a sort of plot reveal for the character and her character arc. So as well as the questions that are more related to just character arcs, I think we are also getting a whole load of supernatural and weird stuff already. This is a Mike Flanagan production after all. For instance, we have these sightings and rumours of a weird albatross-like rock creature. We're obviously going to get some development on that. There is the island we visit early full of mysterious apparitions and cats. Possibly the finale of the season is going to take place on that island. That would be my prediction. Let's see how wrong I am on that one. We're also seeing this apparition of what looks like Monsignor Pruitt. I'm not sure what to predict there. If I can throw out a random weird prediction, I'm guessing maybe Father Paul might actually be Monsignor Pruitt, but he's kind of had a miracle that has de-aged him. That would be my guess. Maybe that could be completely out there, but that is my prediction. We also get this interesting flashback from Riley of the church looking kind of bloody. That's going to be interesting to find out. I'm sure we'll get some backstory there about maybe why he left the island being related to that. And we also see Riley's younger brother Warren sneaking out late at night. Now, early on in the episode, he sneaks out to go and smoke some weed on the island. My prediction is that is not what he was doing this time. I think it was more related to her.
Her?
Again, I could be completely wrong. I'm totally unspoiled beyond episode 1, so let's see how this goes and see how wrong I am. I am really keen to watch the rest of the season, and I don't know if I'm going to do reviews for every episode, but you'll almost certainly get at least a stream on the rest of Midnight Mass, because I'm very fascinated with everything Mike Flanagan puts out there, and I'm really excited to see what he does with the rest of this series, which by all accounts is a passion project for him. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I hope I've persuaded you to give Midnight Mass a go if you weren't entirely convinced already, and I hope you'll join me if I do anything else on the series. And yeah, the next thing you're going to see is the regular Tuesday live stream at 8 PM. I'll see you then. Thanks, y'all. Cheers.
Good, real Horrorshow.